So this podcast is going to be about uh, true love, what love really is. Um, and I'm going to hand over to you, Dr. Ludi. What is love?
Yeah, I think it's all-consuming kind of, it's a value, all-consuming value, love. So it means that the thing that you love is primary in your life. It's at the core of your life. That's how I understand it. It would drive you. So, for instance, that's why, love of money. Say, this is what, sorry to go back to Jesus, but just a teaching tool. He was totally against money because he realized that it was at the heart of culture, of the cult. And it split us as human beings. The love for your sibling, the love for your mother, the love for your brother. Money can split you from those relationships. And he knew that. It's a device, a devilish device, diabolical. They've created this thing called money, and everyone seems to love it, especially in the capitalist system. It is driving the whole system. So it's a diabolical system. Why? Because it splits us as human beings. It splits us as a family. It's a device that splits us immediately. You're charging each other. We are all family members, don't forget. For human beings are all family members, potentially. The thing that stops us from realizing that is the capitalist system, which is all based on money. If they can get you charging your family member, your brother, your mother, your sister, etc., then they've got you, divide and rule. They've divided you, and then they can rule you based on that thing that you now love. They've given you something to love that's far more valuable than your relationship with your kin. And that's what they seem to have done. They're not with everybody, but it was really rapidly spreading like an epidemic. Everyone seems to be falling in love with money.
I mean, whilst we're slightly going off the subject here, that whilst you're talking about that, are you aware where money comes from and how it's created, or how people? Because I remember when I first watched the Zeitgeist film by Peter Joseph many years ago, and he's actually he seems to be one of the only commentators that is actually takes this whole money and capitalism thing apart. Who's got a very sharp mind. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he's got tied up with the whole thing. He should have. I don't know what he should do, but he seems to be completely obsessed with going on and on and on about it, when he did a very good job with the Zeitgeist films. And I don't know why he doesn't move on to some practical solution to it all. But when I first found out about how money was created, I remember, that basically it's created. You should watch the Zeitgeist films to understand it properly, because I can't do it any sort of justice. But it's created when we borrow it. It's literally created into existence, which is totally insane. And then we have to pay interest back. And there's not enough money in circulation to actually pay the interest back. And it's all just made up. It's a made up concept, but it's a very powerful concept. And as you say, there's people do love it, and they're committed to it, so to speak. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but just very briefly, when I told my wife, "Oh, we've got this mortgage, and they just created the money out of nowhere, and now we're having to pay back all this money to them," and she sort of said, "So what?" And in a way, that was the right response, because there's nothing you can do about it, right? And in another way, it was like, I was like, "What do you mean, so what? This is a complete and utter rip-off, a total scam, right? Yeah, you pay back 4 or 5 times the amount that you borrowed, and they just made it up. And they just like it's as if they went round the back. Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, you want £1 million? Hold on, I'll just go round the back. I'll just print it." And that's the equivalent of what they're doing, right? But to go back to the subject, so I think, if I'm not mistaken, you would say that that love of truth is where your love should be, and that's where your first image is not to your wife, or not to your children, and not to your friends, even not to anyone or anything, not to a religion, not to a religious figure, not to a mythical figure, nothing. Just to truth, loving truth. So what I'd like just to you to speak about. I mean, you've spoken about that quite a bit in our podcast, but I think it's always worth revisiting because it's such an important aspect, an idea. But I also want you to speak more about, love in terms of because I've learned a lot from you with our relationship. You've been an absolute solid ally of mine, especially throughout this situation that I've had since my diagnosis. You've been there 100% to me, been to all the meetings that I've had with surgeons and medical meetings, and you've been out here with me living in close quarters, which isn't easy to anybody. It's very difficult and very challenging for two people to live together. And I've learned a lot from you, and there's a lot of improvement for me to make with myself and my own attitude and relationships. So can you talk both about love of truth and also love in relationships?
Yeah, to me, the most important thing, the most humanely, is the identification of and establishment of within yourself of truth. Truth is the guiding principle, in my opinion. There's nothing higher. It's the truth, and it's borne out in engineering or any field. The engineer's aim is to build a true bridge that it stands for all time. That's what his aim is. It may not stand for all time, but the fact that it stands for 100 years is that he's seeking after truth. And then the engineering process will be followed truly, very effectively, and he will end up with a bridge that stands very well. If he gets it wrong, if he doesn't follow truth and he actually errs, the bridge will fall down. And that was the case originally. The calculations were not true, so the bridge then failed. And that's how you learn, you evolve. You take that data, feed it back in, and eventually you have something that is true, that works. So to me, that's the guiding principle. It should be for our lives as human beings. And also the other thing I wanted to mention was currency, the link between current and currency. Currency, the true currency should be love of truth, or love itself. That should be the currency that we use in our relationships. That will make them stronger. Instead of, we need to just realize that currency is an abomination. It actually defeats the true current, which is love. It stands that down and separates us as a human family. And that's what's happened. They've managed to insert this piece of paper, and they become more valuable than our love for each other. So then we put that in front. We put a charge on each other instead of recharging each other. We're always forever charging each other, and in so doing, we're not recharging each other. That's the real currency. The real currency is to inspire each other, to fill each other with inspiration. That leads to more love, more creativity, a better world, a beautiful world, in fact, as opposed to this cult that we're living in, which is all about charging and draining each other. Every time you charge someone, you're taking something from them. You're robbing them of energy and current. So this is my feeling. These are things to play with.
And what about there's a lot of talk in the world, and a lot of it is throwaway, but a lot of talk in the world about loving oneself. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, there's two. The negative connotation is that you're selfish, so you're serving yourself exclusively, and you're cutting off the help from others. So you're so focused on yourself that you ignore everyone else. That's narcissism taken to its extreme. That's narcissism. But self-love is also necessary for the reasons that we said earlier in the previous podcast. You have to have self-love in order to believe enough in yourself to push on, to fulfill yourself as a human being. Because as we said, this metamorphosis is very difficult. You're not born as a human being, you have to become one. And self-love is required. If not, the system will break you. So if you don't love yourself and you doubt yourself, that very doubt will erode your framework or your foundation, and you'll end up not being able to achieve. See, it will slowly break you down like wood rot, see, or dry rot or wet rot, or whatever the rots are, all rots. Doubt is a rot. It is an actual fungus. Once it creeps in, it will erode your confidence. And confidence is required. Confidence. Believe in yourself, you see. So yeah, it's absolutely essential, self-belief. especially in a system like this, where there's nobody going to be on your side. Once you start breaking away from the group, you're on your own. So then where's the love coming from? Where's the confidence coming from? You have to build that. You have to build it yourself.
And what do you think about the contamination of the word, or also in contamination? And would you say that romance and I'd like to deal with that word, romance, right? And also the idea that people speak about making love, right? They speak about sex as making love, whereas I think it more is making lust, right? So I'll speak about, you relate to romance, making love, and also to the fact that I was supporting someone I know whose partner it demands them to love them, right, no matter what, right, because she believes that that's what she because she's married to him, she believes that that's what she's entitled to, and she's looking out for is just externally the right and possessing him and etc. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, romance, Roman antics, the antics of the Romans. So it's superficial. Everything's superficial. It's not authentic at all. It has to be, you have to love self. You have to come to a place where you're secure within yourself in order to be able to love someone else. How can you when you're insecure? You'll be possessing the other person. You're too needy. So you're draining the other person. As we said, you're not recharging them. You can only recharge them if you're full of current. If you're fully fulfilled, then you can fulfill another. You've got plenty spare to give to others. But if you're in a state of lack yourself, because you've neglected yourself, again, back to the t-shirt slogan, why breed when you've already got an inner child to feed? When you're fully fed, you can feed others. You've got plenty on board to give to others. So the first requirement is to fulfill yourself, to love yourself. See? Nurture yourself.
So those people there's so many people looking for relationships, right? When they haven't got the relationship with themselves, right? And that really needs to be looked at before you go around looking for an external relationship. Otherwise, you are in a
possessive state.
Yeah,
you're in a state of lack. So you're in a possessive state. You're not in a state of abundance. You're not in a state of fulfillment. You're in a state of lack. So how the hell can you love the other person and you haven't got enough to give? You're a pauper yourself. You're in need of fulfillment. You're looking for someone to fill you up. This is the possessiveness of the so-called love that we experience in this world or this cult. You see? The t-shirt statement is ultimate. It comes back to that. Why breed? Why look outside of yourself for anything when you've already got the inner self unfed? Feed that self first and you'll be adequate to feed anything on the external. And in fact, once you are fed, you'll see that you don't need the external child. There's no need to bring the external child into this situation where the external child needs food now, when you're fed, because that is the child. Once you've done the job of feeding your inner child, there's no need for the external. And you'll see that quite clearly. You'll be completely abundant as you are without the external child.
Yeah, and you won't need a partner either, right? You won't need a partner to marry. You won't need a partner
not to
either
possess,
to possess.
Just to play
and obviously
play with an equal. Okay, hello, an equal who's also fulfilled. That's the partner you should be looking for. Once you won't be able to see that until you're fulfilled. Once you've done the job of fulfilling yourself, you'll be quite okay on your own. You'll be okay. You'll be entertained by your very own self. Wonderful, completely abundant. But if you do come across another in the same state, be beautiful to play with that person, but there'll be no possessiveness about it. There'll be no jealousy, no feeling of lack if that person decided to move along, because you're already fulfilled. It's just a cherry on top. It's just two people in the same condition coming to play for a while. When they part their ways, which they may have to, lovely. You've had a beautiful time together and now you'll have a beautiful time on your own.
Yeah, and I have to say that I think that our relationship is like that. I feel our relationship is like that. You know, you've been here for 8 weeks and we just booked your flight back to London, you know, and that will be fine. I don't know if you're going to join me. Looks like I'm going to Thailand and I'm going to spy out the land and see if it's going to be appropriate to you. And if it's not, then fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, that, and I think also that there's a kind of paradox here, which is that once you do get to that state of being okay with oneself, yeah, then in a way you actually become very attractive, right, to others.
Exactly.
And things can flow and fall into place. You might become a magnet and meet that you're more of a chance anyway of meeting someone like that once you've done that, at least initiated and put that front and center.
The analogy that comes to mind for me is dancing. You see, you go to a place where there's music playing and you can dance on your own. If you look across and you see someone who's moving in a way that's attractive, you can move towards that person. There's nothing wrong. You'd have a beautiful dance together. But once you finish the dance, you wouldn't want to be tied to that person. You wouldn't want to, why would you want to be tied? You have a lovely dance, you shake hands, wonderful. That was a beautiful experience, and you move along. Then you've got your life to live. The other person is, you can come again later on and agree to dance again. It's wonderful. That's the game. Not to be possessing the partner and wanting the partner to live with you and move in with you. Just good dancing partners. It might be that you're just that. You're just good dancing partners. But outside of that, there's no relationship to be had. People are forcing the issue. You see, they're trying to get things blood from a stone. Sometimes the things that your partner has is not for you, or they have just not got what you need. You see, the married partner, I mean, this is the mistake. See, take your time before you marry as well. Make sure that the person is actually the person you want to live for life with. See, divorce rates are so high because people jump into it prematurely. They don't check the people out thoroughly. Have a probationary period, or I would say of at least 5 years of cohabitation to check each other out thoroughly before you commit to yourself on for a lifetime. People are jumping into lifetime commitment, not even knowing their partner, only superficially being attracted by their form, their physical form, but not checking out their character and not having a little time to cohabitate with them. Not a little time. Take some time to cohabitate. You'll learn a lot when you're in close proximity. As Danny was saying, we've been together now for 7 weeks. See? So it's quite intense. Quite intense. All of the problems come to the surface. All of the dysfunction comes to the surface. So a very difficult process, let alone becoming married. Imagine marrying somebody. Then you're locked in with those dysfunctions. It's like a torturous cauldron you've signed up for, only to realize it's torturous, and then you have to break it with divorce. So it's very painful, you see, to go through, and all very costly because you've signed up, you see, property's involved, finances are involved. You've got to disentangle yourself from the person. Why do that? Just take the time to have a probation and check the person out before you get married, for sure, 100%.
I also wanted to just relate this back to DNA and its dastardly diabolical tactics, so to speak. I know that we often kind of anthropomorphize DNA, and I'm aware of that. Of course, it's not a human, but it has
an agenda.
Yeah, it has an agenda in the background. So I wanted to sort of relate the idea of love and making love and romance and all that to DNA's agenda. But before I do that, I just also wanted to say that I think that for me, I think a better word when it comes to self-love, the way I see self-love is more self-care, taking care of the self, right? And that means taking care of the physical self. We've done a whole session about that. And take care of the physical, the emotional self, the spiritual self. But if you could just briefly relate to, how DNA, so to speak, has this agenda and how it's connected to the modern day cult's version of love.
Yeah, there's absolute, when you consider it, there's absolutely no love involved in most relationships. There's only lust involved. You can look at your own relationship. Maybe you're attracted deeply to your wife. Why were you attracted? You don't know much about her at all. So how can you really be attracted? It's lust. You saw a beautiful form, fruits of the loom were displayed, and you jumped straight away to make contact. And then shortly after that, marriage comes.
You say, I love her.
And then you say, I love you.
They want you to say, I love you.
You see? And all it is I lust you. I really lust you. You turn me on, is the phrase. But how do you turn you on? How does the person turn you on? Do they turn you on intellectually? Do they turn you on in every way? Or is it just physically they turn you on? In most cases, just physical. That's why it fades out so quickly. Sex is like fireworks. It's very beautiful, but then it fizzles out. Boom, up in the sky, makes a lot of lovely color. Beautiful. Pops out the box. Is literally that. Whoa, and then afterwards. And that empty feeling, of course, because the fireworks show's over. The orgasm's over. You've experienced it. Now what? Now, where's the rest of the stuff that keeps the relationship going? Anything in interest with the person? You're both into fitness. You're both creating music together. You're both doing fantastic things together. That's what it should be to keep it going. That's usually not the case because you've not checked out the person. You don't even know yourself, in fact. How can you know what you want until you know who you are? You can't demand anything until you know what you need. And you don't know what you need if you haven't engaged in self-development. So first, feed the inner child. And then you won't need to breed, or you won't need to marry, or you won't need to do anything. You'll be cool. If it comes along, a partner that's equal to you, very good. If it doesn't, very good, because you've got the partner within.
Once again, if you're watching this on YouTube and you have some comments, please feel free to do so, and we will relate to them in the future.